The first sign wasn't a sound, it was a silence. The silence of my own front door closing without a click. And that silence started a game I never agreed to play. A game where the rules were written in my own handwriting, on sticky notes left inside my locked apartment. Let me tell you the full story of my paranoia, because going crazy doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow boil, a gradual heating of the water. Until you're the one rattling the pot right off the stove, I need to give you every single detail. Because those details are what made my best friend Kara roll her eyes. They're what made me start doubting my own mind, and they're what finally pushed me to become a stalker myself just to prove I was the one being stalked. I live alone in it. One bedroom box, on the 6th floor of one of those narrow brick and glass buildings that calls itself boutique. Because there's a chalkboard in the lobby that says, "Welcome home" in wobbly cursive. My view is a sliver of sky, a row of dumpsters. And the back doors of cafes where the staff stand in the doorway. In winter, blowing steam off their hands in summer, the whole alley smells of hot metal and overripe fruit from the produce store. Below, it has its own sound, a hum that changes with the seasons, and I know what it's supposed to sound like when no one else is there. My life is quiet. I'm a competitor for a small press that treats deadlines like gentle suggestions, so my world runs on a weird clock. I send emails. At 2 a.m., I nap in strange chunks. The night has never been my enemy. Nights are consistent. They make sense until last June, when the consistency stopped it. Was the door latch my front door if you just let it swing shut? It doesn't click, you have to turn the knob and give it a firm push for the bolt to slide home. I'd built the muscle memory over 2 years, then suddenly I'd come home from the elevator and the door would be perfectly flush with the frame, silent. You tell yourself you forgot. You make a mental note. I started a list in my phone, a note I half-jokingly titled, "Am I Losing It?" And I wrote note 1. Door shut, quiet note 2. Coffee mug moved from its spot on the drying mat. It's always slightly skewed. It was perfectly. Parallel note 3, faint smell of cigarettes in the hall. At 11 p.m. No one on my floor smokes, I know, because the property manager threatened to fine everyone at the last tenant's meeting note. 4. A coin on my bookshelf, a toonie I use as a paperweight. It had slid a few inches. Don't ask me why it mattered. It just didn't matter to me, told myself. I was making a story out of nothing that my pattern-loving brain was being fed by anxiety. Tara told me the same thing over wine. You work alone. Your sense of time is soup. Leave your apartment messy. On purpose. See if anything actually changes. So I started sending traps, not because I was paranoid, but because I was curious, like a kid setting out flour on Christmas Eve to catch Santa eye. Taped a single hair across the gap of my bathroom drawer. I balanced a thread on top of that toonie. I wedged a Q-tip into the track of my sliding balcony. Door on June 21st, the hair across the drawer was sliced cleanly in half, both ends still stuck. Under the tape, and a pair of my own cuticle scissors were sitting right next to my soap dispenser. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes. My heart doing something strange in my chest. I called Kara. She said I'd probably snagged it myself. Remember? We used to tape hair across our dorm fridge, and it always fell. She said, "You're scaring yourself." I bought a doorbell camera. It lasted one night before a security guard named Aiden knocked on my door. Dark hair, dark holes that looked like they'd done real work. He was polite, but firm said the rule wasn't his. If you want to point a camera inside your own place, go for it. He said, voice dropping low, just not into the hall. The building management sent a mass. Emailed the very next day reminding everyone that hallway cameras were a privacy violation. So I did what Aiden said. I pointed the camera inside my apartment straight at the door. That night, the camera's battery, which was at 86% at midnight, died completely at 3:12 a.m. I woke up to the gray dawn light and a low battery chime. No footage, and the door was shut quietly again. Started sleeping with the TV on, not for the noise, but for the blue light that would wash the wall and wake me. If a shadow moved, I started sleeping like prey, shallow breaths with a knot of dread tied tight under my ribs. You can't live like that. And function, you forget your passwords. You leave the stove on, you pour milk directly into the sink, thinking. It's your coffee mug on June 26th. I found a folded brown paper napkin under my doormat, the cheap kind from the cafe. Downstairs inside, in neat block letters, someone had printed, "Why you forgot the green onions, hey Jenna." It was true, I'd been mentally Nagging myself to buy them for days, my rational brain said, "This isn't for you. It's a joke for a roommate," but it was under my mat. I took a picture, added it to the list, tried to forget. The next morning, a yellow sticky note was on my kitchen. Counter same block letters, but this time with tiny hearts drawn inside the O's that made my skin. Crawlo and Io in green is not green onioni. Called the police non-emergency line. The woman's voice was soft with tiredness. "Has there been a break-in?" She asked. I told her about the latch, the hair, the notes. "Ma. We can send a car to check the building, but unless there's signs of forced entry." "There's not much we can do. Have you told your property manager?" I had his name as Gary. He's the kind of guy who calls women kiddo and thinks it's charming, he told me. "Make sure you're locking your door." The police came, took one look around, told me to get a better lock. The super said he couldn't change it, the building has a master key system. It's a security issue if everyone has their own lock. He said his eye is avoiding mine. The sticky notes kept coming. They were never threats, not in any way that would sound an alarm. To anyone else, they were corrections. Comments, edits. "YO splats of olive oil on the stove are greasy. Run the heat a little lower, a few more minutes, and your coffee won't be surya. Shoes will last longer if you don't kick them off by the HEL, and once you look good in red, go back." For the sweater, he had tried on a red sweater at a consignment shop and put it back. I started scanning faces everywhere. In line for coffee on the streetcar, in the dark reflection of the subway window, the security guard, Aiden, smiled when I came through. The lobby asked if everything was okay. He had the calm patience of someone paid to be yelled at tea. Said I thought someone might have a key. You'd be surprised how often that happens. He said contractors, old supers, you can get your own. Deadbolt installed high up. They usually allow that. He glanced up. You might need a stool to reach it though. I'm 5'2". I left a little too fast. I'm not paranoid, I told him. Probably not, he said. But paranoia is just a safety feature like a seatbelt. It's down right up until it's not. This is where I could have stopped it, where I could have pulled the fuse before the fire hit it, but I didn't. I started following people, not like a professional. I'd see a man with hair the same shade of almost black as Aiden's, and I'd follow him after I got my coffee. I'd fixate on a frayed strap on his backpack, decided it was a clue if he got off at my stop. I'd slow down, let him pass, then follow. I took pictures of shoes of the backs of heads. I put them in a folder. I called crowns, because from behind people are just scalp and hair. It made it feel less creepy on July 3rd. I saw my own handwriting on a sticky note on my bathroom mirror. It was a mirror version of my writing familiar, and all wrong. It said, "You're crying," and the O's had those tiny hearts for the rest of the night. Every O I typed looked like a little screaming mouth. Kara came over, did a full sweep, checked the vents, looked for pinhole cameras. "You're giving someone the show they want," she said gently. "If there even is anyone you've lost weights off." "I'm eating," I said. I was knowing there's a difference. "You're sleeping." "Yes," I lied. She looked at my couch. The pillow had a sweat stain in the shape of a skull. "Let me stay. I don't want you to think I'm crazy," I blurted out, and then I laughed, and then I cried in the bathroom with the faucet running so she wouldn't hear that night. We set a trap like we were kids again. A glass of water balanced on top of the door hair across the drawer tape on the deadbolt. We even sprinkled salt on the kitchen floor like bargain bin detectives. We huddled in my room in the dark, whispering until the whispering turned into nervous laughter at 2:44 a.m. The front door clicked, a careful, quiet click. The water didn't fall. The tape wasn't broken. The salt was smooth. At 2:48 a.m., the motion sensing bathroom fan turned on by itself. Tara whispered, "Maybe your pipes are haunted." We lay there listening to every distant door slam, every elevator shutter. Kara fell asleep around 3. I lay awake until exhaustion finally took me. The sticky note the next morning said, "Bobby, the sleepover brings me backy. Took it to the building office," Gary said. "Kids have too much access to sticky notes. We never had this problem with real tape." I demanded he change the locks. "We don't do that unless there's a tenant turnover," he said. "And anyway, if someone's being a creep." "A new lock won't stop notes under the door." "It was on my counter," I said. He shrugged. "Maybe your friend thought it was funny. The thing about losing. Your mind as the world starts treating you like you already have, and you start to believe them. You start bargaining with your own fear. If I'm good for an hour, I can check the peephole if I finish this chapter. One can check the deadbolt tape. On July 8th, I followed a man into the grocery store because of his shoes. Dark sneakers with a white sole, a distinct notch in the leather near the right big toe. I pretended to look at green onions. He reached past me for cilantro. I could smell. His gum spearmint sharp, almost medicinal. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the price. He took his cilantro and left. I watched the shape of his shoulders and followed him. He turned right. I turned right. He stopped at a laundromat to tie his shoe. I stopped 10 paces back and pretended to check my phone. He looked up, our eyes met. It was like a knife hanging in the air between us. "Can I help you?" he asked, politely confused. I said, "Sorry," and fled. I went home and checked the Q-tip in my balcony door. It was gone. The door was still locked from the inside. That same day, a maintenance notice went up: annual fire alarm inspection entry to all units between 9 and 5. I circled the date on my calendar, told myself this was good. Official people with clipboards and July 12th. A man with a visitor badge and a can of air came in to test the sensors. He had strong forearms, kept his baseball cap low. He said he needed to check the bedroom detector too when I said I'd follow. He shrugged like it didn't matter. He took the detector off its base with a twist to check something. I couldn't see, then put it back with a harder shove. He smelled like spearmint gum and faint. Cigarette smoke after he left. I stood on the stool. Aiden had joked I'd need and pulled the smoke detector down. I pried at the seam with my fingernail. There was nothing inside but wires and a manufacturing date. I felt stupid paranoid. I put it back and it didn't quite sit right. It blinked a slow red light every 40 seconds, like a heartbeat that was too weak. That night, the sticky note said, "You're right, Red, isn't you? Don't have the time to tell you every small way." I came unglued. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet unraveling. A single thread pulled over 2 weeks while the world kept turning buses, side pigeons. Fought a little kid on my floor in a dinosaur jacket, refused to go. Unaware unless he could press the elevator button. I kept working, kept showering sometimes. I could feel exactly where an unfamiliar eye would stand to watch me in the bathroom doorway, slightly to the right of the mirror. I kept finding the tape on my deadbolt torn and telling myself it must have been my own hands. On July 16th, I snapped. I told my boss I needed a week. I packed a bag, left my toothbrush, because the thought of someone else touching the bristles made me sick. I booked a cheap room in a hotel near the Gardner Expressway because if I was going to be watched, let it be somewhere with cameras everywhere. I told no one where I was going, not Kara, not anyone. I felt guilty. Then I felt guilty for feeling guilty. I drank 2 tiny bottles of vodka from the minibar and fell asleep in sheets that smelled of industrial. Lemon at 2:03 a.m. My phone buzzed. Tune. If you're going to hide, you should book a place with better curtains. I lay there, the phone's light washing over my chin, arguing with myself about turning on the lamp. Turning it on would make me a silhouette. Not turning it on left me blind in the dark. I texted back, "Who is this?" The 3 dots appeared immediately, then Urink. "You don't lock your balcony door." Not well, I was on the 12th floor. I stood at my knees feeling weak. I pulled on my coat and shoes, my thumbs shaking as I started to text 911. Someone knocked on the door. Quick, polite knocks. "Ma'am, security." A man's voice said different from Aiden's, but just as flat. "Everything okay?" A pause. "Sophia." I opened the door. I opened it because he knew my name. The man in the hall wore a hotel security jacket and a lanyard. He looked past me into the room. "You want to close that?" he said. My balcony door was open, a hand's width, a ribbon of cold night air spilling inside. Stepped in like he owned the place, and for a second I felt relief. He shut the balcony door hard enough to make the glass shutter. He'd pulled the drapes closed. "Someone was on the balcony above," he said. "Kick some snow down it. Sets off. Sensors sometimes. Kids, sorry you were disturbed." Someone texted me. Could be a prank. He looked at my phone clutched in my hand. "We can move you." He led me to a new room, opened the door with a beep of his master key. He glanced inside. Then said, "Take care of yourself, Sophia," and left. I sat on the edge of the new bed. Shivering, I looked back at my phone. "You're sweet when you panic. There's a point past which you can't be soothed by rational explanations." I had reached. I packed my bag, checked out, got a ride share with a driver who wanted to tell me about his cousin's restaurant. I went back to my apartment at 4 a.m. because I wanted the familiar. I wanted my alley's hum, my elevator's shudder. I wanted to know my fear by name. The deadbolt tape was torn. A new sticky note on my counter said, "Makes you ill. So, makes you it. The to Yesi. Walked into my bathroom, looked in the mirror. My lips were red and raw from me licking them, nervous, then smoothing. On balm, I sat on the closed toilet lid and shook. I stood, pulled a smoke detector down from the ceiling again. I sat on the floor with it in my lap and pried at the seam with a butter knife. The plastic creaked and gave way inside, taped to the dome with a piece of surgical tape was a micro SD card. It wasn't a camera, but its presence was a gunshot in a silent field. It made every hair on my body stand up, and I laughed like a mad woman because I understood the brilliant, horrible trick. If I took this card to the police, what would it prove? Only that I had a micro SD card in my own apartment in a place. I could have put it myself. Any footage on it would just be footage of my own home. I didn't call Kara. I went downstairs to the lobby. Aiden was behind the desk. He looked up with his usual calm, then really looked at me. He came around the desk, his hands up slightly. Hey, you okay? I put the smoke detector in his hands. He took it carefully, looked at the card, then looked at me, his face going neutral. Who else has the master keys? I asked. Me, Gary, the property manager, cleaning crews, the fire inspection team. He said, I'll check the camera logs. There are no cameras on my hall. I said, privacy, lobby, stairwells, elevator. He said he went behind the desk, scrolled through timestamps. If you've been feeling weird, there's a guy who keeps letting himself in. From the alley door, it's supposed to lock. I'll have Gary fix it. Who? Hoodie ball cap, looks down after midnight mostly. He glanced at me. Could be nothing. Food deliveries? Food deliveries don't take the elevator without calling first. Some do. He hesitated. Can I ask you a question? Have you dated anyone in the building? No. Anyone who had reason to make you want to feel watched? I thought of my crowns folder, the man at the laundromat. No, I said, I don't stalk people. I didn't say that. Aiden said, what do I do? Move out, he said too quickly then. Change your routines. Don't go home at the same time. Don't leave the balcony door unlatched. I don't. He didn't argue that night. I slept to the sound of my own pounding heart. At 1:12 a.m. the elevator hummed at 1:14. The bathroom fan clicked on at 1:17. My phone buzzed. You and Tano. Julia joke. I forgave you. That's love. I turned on every light in the apartment. I put my phone in the refrigerator to silence it. I took a butter knife and slid it into my sleeve. I opened my front door without a sound and shut it loudly. Locked the deadbolt. Slid. The chain went to my bedroom, shut that door quietly. Then I got into the closet and I waited. I wanted to see his face. I wanted the horror to have a shape at 1:39. The elevator hummed at 1:42. My front door made the tiniest sound of wood, accommodating metal at 1:43. I heard breathing. A stranger's breath in your home is a sound like nothing else. It is proof of another life in your space. It was close near the bedroom doorway. It came with the smell of spearmint gum and cold night air. Tiny red light on the smoke detector in my closet blinked, then went dark, then bright again. A snap of a fingernail flicking. The plastic, a weight settled on the edge of my bed, the mattress creaking a rustle. A hand, I think, feeling the warm shape. I had made with pillows under my duvet, a sound that might have been a low chuckle. I waited until my legs shook uncontrollably. I waited until he got up. I waited until the weight left the bed. He moved around my apartment like he owned it. A soft bump against the coffee table, a tap on the doorframe as he passed. He paused in the hallway. The spearmint smell came closer. His presence wavered the coats around me. He dragged his thumb slowly across the seam of the closet door. Then he moved away. Deadbolt slid open with a soft kiss of metal. The door closed with that careful hush I knew so well. The chain was left dangling. Slightly crooked, I didn't move for 10 minutes when I finally opened the closet door. The apartment was perfectly still. The bed was made, the sticky note on the counter. Say you're getting beer, baby, or that was the first time the police took me seriously. Not because of the note, but because of the audio, the old phone. I had hidden on a bookshelf, had picked it all up the deadbolt. The chain, the footsteps, the scratch of a thumb on wood, the whisper that sounded like good girl. Or maybe don't. Curl, an officer named. Blevins came, listened to the audio, saw the torn tape and the slack chain and stopped shrugging. He knows the building, Blevins said. He's comfortable in here. He wants you to know he's comfortable. He wants you to feel proud when he approves of you. That's the thing. They dusted for prints, found partials on the door and the bathroom frame they sent me to. Kara's place while they secured the scene. When I came back the next day with the officers, the sticky note was gone. That's a taunt, Levin said, looking at the empty counter. He wanted to show he could be in here whenever he wanted. That evidence is optional when you have a key. They asked for building footage the lobby video showed Gary. Propping the alley door open with a flat of paint, it showed Aiden arriving for his shift. It showed a man in a dark hoodie riding the elevator at 1:39 a.m. Head down, he tapped a key fob and the light blinked. Who is that? Blevins asked. Gary looked. Uncomfortable. Could be a contractor. At 1:39 in the morning? Sometimes we do off-hours work. Who has that fob? Gary scrolled through a dusty spreadsheet. Master. Looks like one of the master fobs wasn't checked back. And after the fire inspection, Aiden, who was watching quietly, said, It wasn't me. We're not saying that. Blevins said. Aiden folded his arms, stared out at the alley. Do you recognize the shoes? I asked before I could stop myself. Gary said shoes or shoes. Aiden looked at me, then at the screen. He drags his right foot a little, you hear it. He rewound the tape there. It was a faint, irregular scrape on every other step. That's not a contractors walk like. They have a schedule. Who walks like that? Blevins asked. Guys who don't want to be noticed. Aiden said, guys who've done time. You sure have opinions. And Gary said, fake light. Want to do my job too, buddy. I'm doing. Aiden said I stayed at Kara's that night. We ate pasta, watched bad TV, laughed at nothing. We put a chair under her door handle. I slept. I dreamed of shoes scuffing ash-colored dust at 3:07 a.m. My phone buzzed the UK node. Ubwin, isn't it cozy to have? A friend. You breathe quieter when you share. Kara was asleep in the next room, her soft whistle. A sound. I'd known since we were 19. I typed back, what do you want? He answered immediately, UNKNO. To be let in, he didn't sleep again the next afternoon. Blevins called. They had a name. The man in the hoodie was one of the fire inspection contractors, not the one who came to my unit. Another guy named Colin with a record for trespassing. They found him 2 days later because he went back to the building. At 1:14 a.m., like his terror had a schedule. Aiden saw him on the camera, didn't we? He took the stairs, Matt. Colin on the 6th floor landing, didn't fight him. Just talked to him in a low, calm voice. I heard the audio later. It made my throat close. Hey man, Aiden said. Walk with me. Let's get some air. They walked down through the lobby under the welcome home. Sign out into the alley. They turned left into a crook of shadow where the security camera has a blind spot. Aiden said. Give me the fob, Colin said. You're not a cop. Aiden said. No, I'm a witness. There was a silence on the tape, a silence with its own weight, then a scuffle, a squeal of rubber on concrete, a curse. Then Aiden said, don't, and someone else said soft, okay, like he didn't mean it. Aiden is okay. He has a bruise on his arm, a dent in his watch. Colin had a flashlight in his pocket that wasn't a flashlight. It had a camera lens where the bulb should be. The police found a case in. His car with micro SD cards labeled with dates and unit numbers. A folded brown napkin that smelled like coffee. Some of the footage was mine. He had breathed in my hallway, sat on my bed, watched the red light blink. He had filmed himself writing notes. On my counter with my pen, his hand need each show a little open mouth. He had footage of other people too. The old woman on 3 who naps with the TV loud, the couple on 7 who fight and then make up. The kid on 5 who lines up his coins and cries. When they fall, he had captured the building's private breath. He had footage of me in the shower, the mirror not quite fogged enough. I watched 10 seconds of that before I leaned over and threw up into a police station trash can. They arrested him. There will be charges, trial words like pattern and intent and escalation. People have been kind since it got around the building. They bring muffins, they say. I never would have guessed he looked normal. I say everybody looks normal. Under fluorescent lights, Kara cried and apologized like it was her fault. Aiden bought me a red sweater, left it at the desk with a sticky note that said, you can pull it off. I laughed until I cried because the O's were just O's empty. And round the building replaced all the locks, moved me to a unit on the other side, so my windows face the street, not the alley. I keep my curtains open at night, watch the car lights slide across my ceiling. It feels like the city is breathing alongside. Me here is the part of the story I don't know what to do with even after the arrest. After the evidence, there's a part of me that remembers the men. I followed the heat of being the eye instead of the animal, and I am ashamed there's a part of me that can't stop wondering what attention looks like to someone like him when the thing you want most is a door opening softly in the night. You can live in the world again, Blevins told me. People don't have to be the shape of your fear. I put plants on my windowsill. I cook messy meals and leave the grease splats on the stove. I let my shoes get scuffed. I buy green onions and eat them raw over eggs. I close my door and let it click however it wants. Sometimes I wake up at 1:43 a.m. and stand in the hallway, just listening to the building breathe. Sometimes the bathroom fan clicks on, and I laugh sometimes. I put a sticky note on my own counter that says something kind: you did enough today. You're not an animal in a CH. Sometimes my phone buzzes at a weird time, and I throw it into the refrigerator out of pure habit. Old tricks for new days, I always take it out. I always check there. Are no more texts, just bank alerts and spam emails. But there was a crumpled napkin inside my front door yesterday, so it would fall when I opened it. It was blank, but it smelled like coffee and alley air. Not impossible. But specific, I stared at it for a long time with my coat still on, and my keys in my hand, and I folded it in half and in half again and again until it was a tight, damp little square. I slid it under the toonie on my shelf. I didn't take a picture, I didn't add it to a list. I just let it be the size it is, because here's the very last thing I learned: a person can be both wrong and right at the same time. For a very long time, I was wrong to carve the city into threats with my eyes. I was right to listen to the parts of the night that were not my own. If you're reading this because you think you might be crazy, I don't know what you should do. I'm not an expert. I'm not a movie. I can only tell you what I did. I paid attention until the day the attention pointed to something other than me. I made a record. I told the truth even when it made me look bad. I learned the sound my door makes when it is closed carefully from the inside by someone who is not me. It is a small sound, but it is everything. 4 years ago, my body began its final silent rebellion. The diagnosis was end-stage liver failure. A direct and unforgiving consequence of alcohol had been my primary sustenance. I learned the hard way that self-destruction is a solitary prison. The pain you inflict on others is a ripple, but the damage you do to yourself is a tidal wave that eventually washes everything away. I had slowed down in my 30s, not due to some profound wisdom, but because the lifestyle lost its sheen. Showing up to my father's endless yacht parties, hungover and surrounded by kids half my age, was, as my friend Freddie so eloquently put it, a pathetic look. I sometimes wish my vice had been gambling. At least then there was the fleeting, electric chance of a win. My addiction only offered a guaranteed loss of time, of health, of the very essence of who I used to. My liver was a ruined thing, scarred beyond any natural repair. The jaundice was so severe, Freddie joked that it looked like I used pee as eye drops. My body was consuming itself, my frame shrinking by the week. The only glimmer of hope came from a decision made for me in infancy. My father, in a rare moment of long-term planning, had enrolled me in Hemicare's premier Life Vault package. They had taken my blood as a child, and now they promised a perfect, genetically identical replacement organ. A second chance, available only to those with the means to purchase it. My doctor explained the miracle. While traditional transplants carry the perpetual risk of rejection in the body's immune system, attacking the foreign invader, Hemicare's bioprinted organs boasted a flawless integration rate. They weren't just replacements, they were upgrades, the healthiest possible version of the organ I had ruined. I made the call and was scheduled immediately. Weeks later, I arrived at the Hemicare facility. It was a monument to sterile opulence, a cross between a 5-star hotel and a clean room. The air was perfectly climate-controlled, but carried the faint antiseptic tang that betrayed its true purpose. The waiting room was a serene, sound-dampened space with deep armchairs and abstract art. I had barely settled in when a young woman entered. She had sleek black hair and wore clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Yet she moved with a tired slump, dropping into a chair as if she owned it. She kept rubbing at her left eye, which was covered by a stark white surgical patch. I instinctively shifted away, a primal fear of contagion taking hold. A nurse soon approached me, her smile professional and unwavering. "Welcome to Hemicare. May I have your name, please?" Adam Jones, I said. It was an alias. Given what I was about to undergo, discretion seemed not just wise, but necessary. Of course, Mr. Jones. We have you on the life vault plan. If you'll please follow me, we'll get you prepared. Her heels clicked a precise rhythm on the polished dark wood floors as she led me through a labyrinth of warmly lit, tan-painted hallways. The sterile smell grew stronger. She showed me to a private changing room where I swapped my rumpled, days-old suit for a surprisingly plush gown. The floor was cold against my bare feet, a sharp contrast to the gown's softness. In the mirror, a stranger stared back, sallow skin, sunken eyes the color of old newspaper, and a gauntness that spoke of prolonged illness. My hair was a greasy mess. This procedure wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming the ghost. In the mirror, the nurse took my soiled suit from me, handling it with a barely perceptible distaste before sealing it in a plastic garment bag. We'll have this cleaned for you. Please follow me to your room. Our journey was interrupted at a corridor intersection. Two male nurses were maneuvering a large cart bearing a crimson container, roughly the size of a human body. The shorter of the two paused to consult his clipboard. As he did, a low, wet thump echoed from within the container. The sound was unmistakably organic. The taller nurse shot his partner a sharp, fearful look and quickly pulled the cart down the hall. The shorter man scrambling after him with a nervous glance in my direction. My eyes followed their path and landed on a single, ominous door. It was unmarked except for a small placard that read, "Spare room." It was the only door I'd seen with a sophisticated badge scanner, and for a moment, I could have a faint crimson light bled from its base. "What's in there?" I asked. My nurse, she flinched, her composure cracking for a microsecond. "Oh, that?" she said with a forced, airy laugh. "Just a storage closet for emergency supplies and replacement parts. Nothing for patients to worry about. Your room is just here." My room was another shock of luxury. It was a spacious suite with a wide, automated medical bed, dimmable mood lighting, a sitting area with gray leather couches and a dark marble coffee table, a private bathroom, a large television, and even a minimalist mini fridge. It was more elegant than any hotel I'd ever paid for. "Please make yourself comfortable. Your stay depends on your recovery. You may leave the facility, but we strongly advise against it. I'll inform your surgeon you've arrived." The moment she left, I beelined for the fridge. It was stocked with soft, easy-to-digest foods, pudding cups, applesauce, protein shakes, and an array of jellies. I took a cherry jelly cup, its contents a translucent ruby red. As I ate it under the warm glow of the overhead light, its color vividly brought back the memory of that faint red glow under the spare room door. The curiosity became an itch I had to scratch. I tried the door to my room. It was locked, a short. While later, a knock announced the arrival of a man in an immaculate white coat. "Mr. Jones, I'm Dr. Matthew Ross. I'll be performing your procedure." He left the door ajar as he entered. He explained my condition, decompensated cirrhosis with a calm, rehearsed efficiency. "Your new liver will be ready soon. Please fast for the next 8 hours. Surgery is at 10 p.m. And for your safety, please do not leave this room. Our halls are complex, and we need to know where to find you should an emergency arise. Why is the door locked?" I asked. He produced a key card from his pocket. "Standard protocol. Patients can become disoriented post-op. We must ensure everyone is accounted for. You are free to use your ensuite bathroom, and you may leave the building with an escort. Any other questions?" I needed a distraction, a reason to keep him talking. "Where does the organ actually come from? Why is it better?" "It's grown from your own genetic sample," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Unlike other facilities that cryogenically preserve blood and culture organs only when needed, we begin the growth process immediately. It's exponentially more expensive to maintain the organs in a viable state, but the benefit is perfection. The body accepts it as its own, with zero risk of rejection. But why not just freeze the organs too?" I asked, slowly moving toward the empty jelly cup on the table. Tissue damage on that scale is irreversible. Preserving a complex organ like a liver requires a dynamic, life-sustaining environment, not a frozen stasis. We maintain them in a biosimulative apparatus. As he spoke, I subtly peeled the aluminum seal from the jelly cup. "One more thing, Doctor," I said, feigning embarrassment. "The faucet in the bathroom seems to be dripping. Could you possibly take a look?" He seemed slightly annoyed, but nodded. "I'm not much of a handyman, but I'll see." He set his clipboard down and stepped into the bathroom the moment he was out of sight. I moved with a speed I didn't know I still possessed. I rushed to the door and carefully wedged the crumpled aluminum foil into the strike plate, preventing the lock bolt from fully engaging. I was back in place before he reemerged. "It seems fine now," he said, retrieving his clipboard. "But if it acts up again, use the call button. Thank you, Doctor." "I appreciate it," I said, my smile feeling more like a grimace. He left and I waited, counting the minutes until the hallway sounds faded. I turned the handle. The door, impeded by my makeshift jam, opened with a soft click. The corridors were deserted. I moved silently, a ghost in a gown, navigating the identical hallways guided only by room numbers. As I turned a corner, I nearly collided with the same short nurse from before, who was walking backward while pulling an empty cart. He was so flustered he didn't immediately speak. He just stared at my face with an expression of deep, unnerving confusion, as if trying to solve a puzzle. His taller colleague nudged him sharply. The shorter nurse blinked rapidly, forcing a smile. "My apologies, sir. You should really be in your room." He whispered something to the other nurse, who took the cart while the short nurse hurried away down the hall. A hunch told me to follow him. I trailed at a distance, watching as he glanced repeatedly over his shoulder. His destination was no surprise. The spare room. He swiped a key card, entered a code, and slipped inside. My plan was to wait him out and perhaps steal the card. But he emerged only moments later, sighing with relief before his eyes darted up and down the hall in paranoia. I ducked behind a large potted plant in an alcove, my thin frame easily concealed. His footsteps approached, slowed, then stopped just feet from my hiding spot. I held my breath. After a tense moment, I heard him mutter, "Get it together, man," before his footsteps hurried away. I emerged and sprinted to the door. Miraculously, his keycard was still in the scanner. The air around the handle was bitingly cold. I pulled the door open. The room was a meat locker. My breath plumed in the frigid air. The space was vast and dark, dominated by a single glowing terminal on a central podium. Above, hanging from the ceiling like grotesque Christmas ornaments, were rows and rows of large, translucent capsules. Each one held a shadowy form suspended in amber fluid. I approached the terminal. The screen prompted for a name or ID. I typed Adam Jones. Result found. I selected my profile. It listed all my details: age, blood type, medical history. On the right was a large button labeled Spare. I pressed it. A second profile materialized. Spare. 7,370,617,265. Age 33 organs available. All systems green, except liver, unavailable. Cold dread, far deeper than the room's chill. Seized me. Another button glowed yellow. Retrieve. I pressed it. Machinery whirred to life above me. The capsules shifted along tracks with heavy metallic clunks until one descended directly over the central platform. Lights illuminated the chamber from within, and I saw him, a man, curled in a fetal position, floated in the viscous fluid. Long, brown hair drifted around his face. A breathing mass covered his mouth and nose, and a tangle of wires and tubes coiled around his naked, muscular body. His eyes were open-noki, unfocused, but aware. They tracked my movement with a passive, animal instinct. I pounded on the thick glass. "Hey, can you hear me?" My voice was a desperate rasp. There was no recognition, only that vacant, infantile stare. And then The familiarity of him hit me. The hair color, the shape of the jaw. I saw two small, distinctive moles on his curled fist. I looked down at my own wrist. Two identical moles stared back. This wasn't a man. This was me. A younger, healthier, preserved me. The yellow button on the screen had now turned to threatening. Red. Drain and extract. Before I could process the horror, voices echoed from the hall. I dove into a deep shadow behind the terminal as the two nurses burst in, wheeling the red container. You absolute idiot. You left your card in the door. The tall one hissed. I know. But it was that patient Jones. There's something about him. When I left, I swore I saw him again down the hall. I ran, but no one was there. They both froze, their eyes locked on the occupied capsule. You didn't return the spare? The tall nurse roared, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. I did. I swear it. There must be a glitch in the system. A glitch? You're blaming a glitch for your incompetence? The shorter nurse was on the verge of tears. Please don't tell Carla. She'll have my job. It won't happen again. The tall nurse sighed, his anger subsiding into weary exasperation. Fine. The system logs the retrieval. I'll say I did it for a quality check. But you have? To report bumping into the patient. Deal? The short nurse nodded frantically, the tall nurse pressed a button, and my clone's capsule ascended back into its place among the others. All right, the tall nurse said, his breath fogging. Who's next? The shorter nurse, wiping his eyes, checked his clipboard. Tammy Warren, ID 657965, ODOA, 24, severe bilateral eye damage. Another eye job? That's the third this week. Is there an epidemic we should know about? The capsules moved again. It's not a disease, the short nurse said, typing on the terminal. It's a drug. Eye candy, a powerful hallucinogen. The high is supposedly incredible, but it leaves a corrosive residue that destroys the optic nerves. The worst part? Most of them get new eyes from us, just to go out and ruin them again. They treat their organs like they're disposable. A new capsule descended. Inside was the young Asian woman from the waiting room, her black hair floating around her like a halo. She was perfectly still, her body pristine, but her existence utterly void. Disgusting, the tall nurse spat. They have no respect for the gift they're given. They don't stop to think what would happen if these meat fridges ever failed. He tapped the screen. The room was bathed in a deep, photographic red light. I pressed myself deeper, into the shadows. The fluid in the capsule drained with a gurgling sigh. The glass slid open, and the girl's limp body slumped onto the platform. She made no sound, no movement. She was a thing, a commodity. All right, you get the legs, I'll get the arms, the tall nurse instructed. They moved with a gruesome, practiced ease. The shorter nurse fumbled, her slick body slipping from his grasp. Sorry, he muttered, grabbing a towel to dry her off before they heaved her into the waiting red container. She offered no resistance, a doll being put away in a box that my stomach churned. I had to get out. The tall nurse returned to the terminal. Which room? Room 411. They left, pulling their grisly cargo behind them. The silence they left behind was deafening. I stumbled to the terminal and pulled up my clone's profile one last time. My finger hovered over the retrieve button. I could free him. But what then? They would know. They would come. What if I needed another organ? A heart? A kidney? Would I be sacrificing my own future survival for a creature that seemed less than human? I looked up at the countless capsules, a gallery of silent, watching eyes. Some had one eye missing. Some had none. I told myself they weren't people. They were product, storage. If I opened the capsules, they would just spill out onto the floor, helpless and doomed. It was a coward's thought. And I knew it even then. With a trembling hand, I closed the profile and fled the room, leaving them. All behind now, 4 years later. My new liver is perfect. My health is restored. But I see those milky, watching eyes in every dream. I am complicit. I left them there. I am writing this now because the guilt is a heavier poison than alcohol ever was. I am hoping that by sharing this, someone with more courage than me will see it, will ask the right questions, and will do what I was too terrified to do. I cannot go back. I can only hope that someone somewhere can finally open the door to the spare room. My name is Riley. I am a woman in my early 30s, and my home is a quiet cottage in a small town in northeastern New Hampshire, close to the White Mountains. I settled here for the peace it offers. The late summers are perfect, with a coolness in the air that hints at the coming fall, but still allows you to enjoy the sun without a heavy jacket. I was raised in Massachusetts and made the decision to move north in my 20s. My mother's constant attention was becoming too much for me, and my father was always at the office. I craved isolation. But my retreat was motivated by another, more urgent reason. A problem I have carried with me since childhood. There's another version of me walking around in the world. I do not mean a twin sister or a figment of my imagination. I do not believe she is a spirit or a monster wearing my skin. She is simply another me. The initial encounter happened when I was perhaps 7 years old. I was on the school playground as the day was ending. I kicked a ball toward a row of sharp, prickly bush as a child. I was afraid of those bush because they scratched and stung. I did not want to reach through them, but I had to get my ball. That was when I noticed the second ball, identical to my own, sitting right beside it. It was getting dark. My mother and I were the only people left on the grounds. I had not seen any other children or any other bright red balls. I dismissed it, thinking another kid must have forgotten theirs. I pushed my fear aside, bent down to grab my ball, and when I looked up, I was staring directly into my own face. This other me appeared just as shocked and scared as I was. We made eye contact and jumped backward at the same moment, both of U.S. silent and frozen. The fear that shot through me was overwhelming. This was not just a look-alike. We had the same hair, the same eyes, the same blue overalls and white shirt with dots. We even had the same small mole beneath our left eye. Thought my mother called for me, saying it was dark and time to leave. Coming. We both shouted the response in perfect unison, then stared at each other in renewed confusion. I felt a panic so deep I could only stand there, breathing fast. Without thinking, I pushed the other girl into the thorny bushes and ran to my mother, crying uncontrollably. She assumed I was upset about leaving the ball. She promised we could come back on the weekend. I could not form the words to explain what truly happened. I just held on to her tightly as she drove us away. I looked out the car window as we left and saw myself climbing out of the bush with bloody knees and a face full of angry tears, watching the car carrying the real me and our mother drive away. Many details from that night are blurry, but the image of my own face staring back at me is permanently clear. I still cannot look in a mirror without seeing that other girl in the fading light of the playground, her eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. That memory is sharp when all others have faded. The second time I saw her was on my 10th birthday. I had a large Disney-themed party, and I was dressed as Cinderella. I remember stepping away to use the bathroom while my mother brought out the cake, promising to wait for me. From the bathroom, I faintly heard the birthday song being sung. Confused, I hurried out and stopped dead at the sliding glass door. There, standing at my cake, surrounded by my friends and family, wearing my Cinderella dress, was the other me. She sensed me, and we locked eyes. She stopped smiling and dropped her cake. My mother gently cleaned her face and gave her a new slice. But the other me was not paying attention. I do not recall everything that happened next. I only remember a blinding rage at seeing this imposter being cared for by my mother. But she did not look evil. She looked terrified. She wore the same expression of shock I must have had during our first meeting, and I realized I now had the same look of furious tears she had shown me years before. It was as if we had traded places. I remember rushing forward and tackling her to the ground, screaming for her to get away from my mother. The party erupted into chaos. It took 3 adults to pull me off of her. When I finally calmed down and stopped fighting, I was not on top of the other me. I was on top of my best friend, Lisa, who was badly beaten and crying. I looked around for any sign of my double, but she was gone. There was no evidence she had ever been there. Most people assumed I had some kind of mental break. My mother certainly thought so. I was put into therapy. My mother's version is that Lisa was getting an early slice of cake because she had to leave, and I saw her and flew into a jealous rage. But I know what I saw that day. Lisa and I were never friends again. I lost many friends. Kids at school called me the jealous stepsister, a mean joke about the party I had ruined. I eventually stopped telling people about the other me. A psychiatrist prescribed antipsychotic medication. The pills made me tired and hungry, and I began to believe maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe the double was a recurring nightmare, and I had a psychotic break that caused me to attack Lisa. But it was not that simple. The next time she appeared, I was 15. I had my first boyfriend, Mark. Mark was 16, a little heavy, and very smart. I liked him. We studied together often. He introduced me to anime, and I got him to read Harry Potter. It was a normal teenage romance dot one day at school. I went to say hello to him. He looked angry. I asked him what was wrong. He told me he thought I was done pretending to like the fat nerd. I asked him what he was talking about. He took out his old flip phone and read a text message aloud. Mark, I cannot do this anymore. I am done pretending to like the fat nerd. You are a creepy loser who watches cartoons. Maybe call me when you lose some weight and find a real hobby. I accused him of making it up. He showed me the phone. My name and number were right there on the screen. He called me a shallow bitch and walked away. I checked my own phone in confusion, and the sent message was right there in my history. I had no memory of sending it. Right then, I got a new text message from my own number. That is for ruining my birthday. This had to be a prank. But spoofing a number was not easy back then. And if it was spoofed, why was the message in my sent folder? I looked around angrily, and I saw her. She was peeking around a corner and then quickly walking away. I chased her down an empty hall and into a bathroom. But when I entered, it was empty. Both stalls were vacant. I took my bottle of antipsychotics from my purse and counted the pills on the dirty sink. Desperate to prove I had not missed a dose. I had to be going crazy. But the count was correct. I was taking my medicine. I tried talking to my therapist about the double again, but he blamed my hormones and adjusted my medication, which did nothing to my life continued like this. Every so often, this other me would show up and create chaos. Sometimes I would be the one seen while she was acting normal, like at the birthday party. Most of the time, I was left to deal with the mess she made. I feel it all connects back to that first day on the playground, when I was the one who got to go home with our mother. Even as her actions became meaner, she always seemed just as frightened of me as I was of her. The few times I fought back, I was not kind either. I do not know if she believes she is the real one and I am the copy. I have never seen her do anything magical or demonic. She's just me, with all my same fears and anger. It is like we are two rivals fighting for control of a single life. This brings me to the most recent event, which happened just a few days ago. I have lived in this town for 15 years. The constant trouble caused by the other me forced me to leave my mother's house and try to start a new life alone. I stopped taking my medication. I became a recluse, terrified that if I made friends, she would sabotage them, or I would see her in my home and another violent incident would occur. Last night, I was cooking dinner when she walked out of my bedroom. We exchanged that same frightened look. I decided I had finally had enough. I had to know what was happening. I had to speak to her. Let me guess, I began, forcing my fear down and replacing it with anger. What are you doing in my kitchen? She looked stunned. You ... You can talk to me? Of course I can talk, I replied. I just do not bother most of the time. You always show up and ruin everything. Me? Ruin things? Her voice grew heated. I'm not the one who appeared at our childhood home and attacked Lisa at the birthday party. Lisa was not there. I was trying to get you. You took my birthday song, you broke up with my boyfriend. It was my birthday, she yelled. Why will you not just disappear? I became enraged. I grabbed the pot of boiling stew from the stove and threw it at her. She screamed as the hot liquid burned her skin. There was no magical transformation. She just blistered like a normal person would. She grabbed a knife from the table and stabbed me in the arm. We fell to the floor, fighting and screaming at each other. We each insisted we were the real one. We decided to let our fight determine the winner. I blacked out. I am typing this on my phone from a hospital bed. I will show this post to the psychiatrist later today. The doctors say I had a psychotic break after being off my medication for so long. They say I poured hot food on myself, causing permanent scars, and then stabbed myself with a knife. The neighbors reported hearing screams. But only one voice? Mine? The police arrived and found me alone on the floor, critically injured. I was unconscious for 4 days due to a concussion and blood loss. Fortunately, I had placed my mother on a do not contact list long ago. She would never believe me. I can hear the nurse coming, so I must end this here. Please, if anyone understands what is happening to me, even if it is just madness, tell me. If you know any rituals or ways to banish something like this, please share them. I am losing the strength to keep fighting this. And I swear to you, the nurse walking in right now looks exactly like me. This is Riley. I hope I am the real one. At 3:17 a.m., my wife screamed from the bedroom she died in. They told me her death was peaceful. They told me she felt no pain. They were wrong. My wife, Lena, died in her sleep 3 months ago. An aneurysm, no warning, just gone. The grief was a heavy blanket smothering me. But the silence was worse until the third night. After the funeral, I jolted awake at 3:17 a.m. Exactly, and I heard it scream raw and terrified coming from our bedroom, the room where she took her last breath. The room I hadn't entered since they took her body away. It happened again the next night, and the next always at 3:17 a.m. The sign started. Her toothbrush was wet. Her perfume hung in the air. The sheets on her side of the bed were rumpled like someone had been sleeping there. I thought I was going insane. That grief had finally broken me, so I set up a camera, a baby monitor pointed at the bedroom door. The next morning I watched the footage. My hands were shaking. 3:16 a.m. nothing. 3:17 a.m. the door flew open. Not slowly, it was yanked open from the inside and her scream erupted. From the speaker, a sound of pure agony, but nothing came out. No one was there. The door just swung shut. I stopped sleeping. I started researching everything I could find, but nothing explained it. A hallway mirror cracked for no reason. Her cat would sit outside the door and howl until it bled, and every morning a horrible smell would fill the hall. The smell of rotten wet earth. And old blood. I tried to escape. I booked a hotel room that night. The front desk called me. They said there was a woman screaming in my room. When security checked, it was empty, but on my pillow they found Lena's wedding ring, the one I had locked. In a box at home. I came back. I finally forced myself to open the bedroom door. The air was thick and cold and by her side of the bed. I saw a single footprint, small and bare like hers, but it was soaked with dark, muddy water. I set up another camera, this time inside the room facing the bed. The footage from that night is burned into my mind at 3:17. Both cameras cut to static, but one single frame came through clear. Lena was sitting on the edge of the bed, soaked in mud, her mouth wide in a silent scream. Her eyes were solid black, and behind her was a figure tall and blurred, its hands on her shoulders. It had no face, just a wide smile full of hundreds of needle-sharp teeth. A priest came. He refused to even step inside. He said, "This wasn't a haunting." He told me she isn't a ghost. She's a door. I didn't understand until I found the hole behind the headboard. The wallpaper peeled back like skin, and behind it wasn't a wall, it was a tunnel, a hole of pure darkness that smelled of decay. And that scream, I tried to board it up that night. I woke up choking on muddy water pouring from my mouth. Ran to the bathroom, and in the mirror for just a second, I saw it, something else looking back at me. I went to the cemetery. I dug up her grave with my bare hands. Her casket was filled to the top with dark, stagnant water. She was gone, that thing in my house. It wears her skin. It uses her voice, but it is not my wife. It is a doorway, and my grief, my love, my memory. Her held the door open. It is feeding on me and is not alone anymore now. I hear other voices behind the door, children, laughing, wet footsteps in the hall, whispers in languages, I don't know. Night something knocked on my door, 3 slow. Heavy knocks and a voice whispered through the keyhole, let her innie. Tried to drive away yesterday, but my car died at 3:17 p.m. And I woke up back in my house, mud on my shoes, her perfume in the air, the hole is bigger, now I can hear breathing. Coming from it, they're coming through. She was just the first to preach made from my sorrow. They say, if you grieve hard enough, you can bring the dead back, but I didn't bring her back. I invited them, I don't sleep anymore, I just lie in bed and stare at the door every night at 3:17 a.m. It opens a little wider. She is standing right outside now, her mouth open, her arms limp, her black eyes staring. She doesn't blink, and behind her, I can see them smiling. I think tonight she will finally step inside. I think tonight they will all come through, and I will be waiting. You know, those storage facilities you see off the highway, the big boring ones with the orange doors. I work night security at one, or I did until last week, because last week someone started living in Unit 47, and I'm pretty sure they weren't alive when they signed the lease. Pause for effect, then continue in a more conversational. But 10stone, my name's not important after my divorce. I needed a quiet job, something where I could just be alone. Secure space storage was perfect. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 4 rounds a night. The rest of the time is mine. It's silent, peaceful, or it started last Monday. Jerry from the day shift told me someone rented. Unit 47 paid 6 months cash, but didn't bring a single thing to store. Just signed and left weird, but whatever. My first round was normal until I got to building B. The motion light above Unit 47 was already on, and it stayed on all night. Those lights are supposed to turn off after 5 minutes, but this one just stayed burning by. My 4 a.m. round, I was annoyed. That's when I saw condensation on the inside of the metal door. Little warm beads of water on a climate-controlled unit. That doesn't happen ever. I crouched down to look, and that's when I heard it, a soft whisper. From inside the unit, just numbers counting, 43, 40, 45. I froze, my blood went cold. I got out of there fast, back to the office. I looked at the rental agreement. The name was Margaret Carpenter, an address on Maple Street. I Googled. If the address burned down 2 years ago, 4 people died. Margaret Carpenter was one of them. The obituary photo showed a woman with 1 brown eye and 1 blue eye. Jerry said the woman who rented the unit had 1 brown eye and 1 blue eye. I called in sick the next night. I was too spooked Wednesday night. I had to go back. Jerry said the woman came back the night before, just stood outside her unit for an hour, not moving, just standing there. Did my rounds dreading building B, but I had to go. The light above 47 was on again, but this time I saw shadows under the door, moving, writhing like things crawling over each other. And the counting was back, but now it was multiple voices, all whispering different numbers out of sync 12. 1391, 92. I shouldn't have done it, but I knocked. I said, security open. Oop, woman's voice raspy, like she was talking through water, said, I'm the renter. I have every right to be here. I said, open the door or I call the police. The lock clicked the door. Rolled up just a foot, pitch black inside the darkness. So thick, my flashlight beam just died after a foot. A voice from the black said, come in, we want to show you something. Then a hand shot out from under the door, bone white fingers. 2 long nails caked with dirt. It was burning hot and wet. It grabbed my ankle. I screamed, yanked, my leg back fell, and scrambled away. The hand vanished and the door slammed. Down, laughter came from inside, dozens of voices laughing all at once. I ran to the office, called. The cops told them someone was breaking in. They came 20 minutes later. We went back to Unit 47. The light was off, the door was locked. They cut the lock, rolled it up. The unit was empty, completely empty, not a single thing inside. But the walls, the metal walls, were covered in thousands of tally marks, scratched deep into the steel, and the walls were warm. The cops said kids probably, but they didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. Back in the office, I checked the security camera footage from the building entrance, and that's when I knew it was all real. The footage from that night showed me walking into building B, then it showed me walking out backwards, then in again, then out again, the same 3 minutes. Looping over and over while the timestamp kept moving forward. I checked the night. I called in sick. The footage was normal. It showed a woman in a long burned coat standing by the entrance for a full hour, just staring at the door. She turned her head in. I saw her profile, one side of her face was smooth melted skin. No, I quit right then and there, emailed my supervisor and left. I got a new job stocking shelves at a grocery store. The pay is worse, but I don't care. But I still have the security app on my phone. I still have the access codes, I know. I shouldn't, but I check the cameras sometimes every night at midnight. The woman in the burned coat stands at the entrance to building B. But 3 nights ago, she did something new. She turned and looked right into the camera. She had both eyes, now one brown, one blue, and she smiled. She held up a sign. It said, Unit 48 available soon. I looked it up, the current renter of Unit 48. Jennifer Price. She lived at 1447 Maple Street. She died in the fire last night. The woman held up another sign. Unit 49 available soon. Michael Chen, 1447 Maple Street, died in the fire tonight. She held up a new sign, but this one wasn't for a unit, it just had an address. On it, my address, I am writing this from my truck. I am parked at a motel 3 towns over. I've been driving for 2 hours, but I swear I can still smell smoke, and every time I check my rear view mirror, I see the same pair of headlights. One is normal white, the other is a cold icy blue. They have been 3 cars behind me since I left my apartment. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to keep driving. Remember those creepy chain emails from the early 2000s? Maybe you're too young to remember, maybe you just forgot. Basically, you'd get an email with a subject line like, do not ignore, and it would have some little horror story inside. Something about a ghost in a well or a hook-handed maniac. If you didn't forward it to 10 people, this terrible thing would happen to you. I got my first one on Facebook back in middle school. I was so scared, I actually reposted it. My friends made fun of me for weeks, but hey, no demon ever crawled out of my toilet, so I guess it worked. They were dumb, but they were core memory, so. And this morning, I'm at my desk sipping coffee, doing my usual routine before work. I check my emails. See, the usual stuff, a wedding invite, a newsletter, my boss complaining. But then, right as I'm about to close my laptop, a new one pops up. From an address I don't recognize. The subject line was just one word. Sorry, weird, right? Probably spam, probably a virus, but I was bored, so I clicked it. The message was short. It said, one night, a woman was hit by a speeding car at night. The driver was intoxicated and did not call the police. Instead, he dragged her bleeding body down into the sewers and left her there to die. They found her body 2 days later and brought it into the morgue, where they cleaned her up and tucked her away. But when they went to take her out 2 weeks later, she was missing her empty body bag filled with stinking sewage. If you do not forward this to 5 others by midnight, she will be in your room tonight. She will seek vengeance. This is not a joke. You know what you did. I actually laughed out loud. A blast from the past. The email had an attachment to a PNG file named her. I figured it was some cheesy, scary image part of the joke, so I opened it, but it was nothing, just a completely black image. Total letdown. I forgot about it for the rest of the day. Later that night, I'm home messaging this girl, Eliza. From a dating app, I was running out of things to say, so I told her about the weird email. She thought it was funny, asked me to forward it to her, so I did. Then I went to take a shower. When I got out, I had a new message from her. It said, holy shit. That's terrifying. I messaged back. Something like, I know, right, classic scare stuff, but she said, no, I'm not joking. I'm not talking about the story. Look at the image again. Turn your brightness all the way up. Look closely. My heart started beating a little faster. This wasn't what I wanted to hear before bed, but I did it. I opened the email, re-downloaded the black image. I turned off all the lights and maxed out my phone's brightness, stared at the screen. I had to squint, but then I saw it, and it was absolutely fucking terrifying. You could just barely make it out. A set of floating teeth reflecting a tiny bit of light, shaped like a crescent smile. 2 eyes hovering above them, unnaturally wide, like they were being forced open by invisible hands. I felt that sinking feeling you get when you realize you lost your wallet. Pure Dread Elisa sent another message. She'd used an editing app to make the image brighter. She sent it to me. Opened it, and any last bit of humor or nostalgia was completely gone. The image was still dark, but now you could see it was a woman's face. Well, not a woman, something imitating a woman. Its skin was paper white like a mannequin, but the expression was something no mannequin could ever have it. It was pure hatred, pure evil. The smile was there, but the jaw was clenched tight. The nostrils were huge, flared wide like shotgun barrels. The eyes were stretched owl-like, but the brows were furrowed down in a furious squint, a total contradiction of features. It was all wrong. I tried to do a reverse image search, found nothing. This thing was the original eye. Was standing in my kitchen just trying to process all of this when someone knocked on my door. I checked the time. It was after midnight, Weird Eye. Looked through the peephole. It was a police officer. I opened the door and she immediately told me to step outside. No explanation, just a dead serious look in her eyes. Like I was a criminal. I asked her what was going on. She just said, "Come out now." Just do it. Her voice was a whisper, so I stuck out into the hall. She closed my door behind me and led me outside to the parking lot. She asked if I lived alone. I told her yes. She took a deep breath, introduced herself as Officer Vienna. She said she was here for a noise complaint from my neighbor Sam, the college kid. After she told him to turn his music down, she was walking back to her car and she looked over at my bedroom window. My blinds were open. My window was open too. She said the street light was bright enough to see inside and she saw the outline of a figure standing by my bedroom. Door completely still, like it was waiting for someone to come in. She said it didn't look like a doll or a mannequin. She said she got the sense it was something dangerous. The whole time she was talking, her hand was on her weapon. Her eyes kept darting from me to my window. I remembered I did leave the window open, but the mesh screen was still on. No one could get in without me hearing, and then I realized I had been in my bedroom just half an hour before she showed up to get to the shower. What if I just didn't look? What if it was already there? I didn't want to believe her. But if she was right, what the hell was in my apartment? I started to walk over to look for myself, but Officer Vienna stopped me. She said, "You probably don't want to see it. For your own sake, I wouldn't recommend it." She told me to wait. She had already called for backup. They would go in and clear the apartment. That was 20 minutes ago. They're still in there. I'm waiting in the lobby now because it was cold outside. I still haven't told them about the email. How could that be connected? But now I don't know. I really don't know what to. Think you'll update you if anything else happens.